slip, yarn over, wrap, pull, and repeat. Yin's hands worked shakily on the wool as she repeated the directions of her knitting. She knew the practice like the back of her hand. Having been able to master it at the age of 8, her mother had made sure she did not miss any knowledge and skill a lady is deemed to possess. Not that Yin had any choice for the matter, because in this time a woman can only get a husband if she accomplished in such skills. Slip, yarn over, wrap, pull, and repeat. At the same time, Yin had no complaints. She loved knitting. It brought her joy, especially after such success when she would bathe in the compliments of her mother for creating lovely patterns. Yes, she loved it, for it used to bring her so much joy. But now, it's unable to do so, despite the fact that she finds the absent joy in her craft so infuriating and disappointing. She knew where all those defectuations are coming from. No matter how many clothes she has knitted, and no matter how she worked her hands until it trembled, she couldn't distract herself from that horrifying night. It had been 2 days since Yin's near-death experience. She was just come out of it mostly unharmed, only a few scratches on her knees, elbows, and arms. Those scratches can be healed, and those will soon fade away. But the same cannot be said about the wounds etched in her mind. She tried to relish in her loved hobby, but she can't find joy in the darkness thoughts as now permanently enveloped her mind. She has stayed in her new chambers for the past few days. There is one window that overlooks the garden, and yet Yin never dared to draw the curtains in fear that she's being watched. She barely eats now, for the only thing she sees is intake fear. She managed to wash herself and change her clothes only because she was reminded and forced to do it. Yin was sunk into her fearful self, fearful to syringe herself with trial things. No, this is not good at all, Yin muttered, frustrated that her scarred thoughts have once again led her astray from maintaining the pattern she's trying to make in a blanket. Her current situation brings her frustration whenever things go out of control. With a crunch, she threw the blanket and knitting needles to the cold grounds she's currently sat on. It nearly caught on fire as it passed the 2 candles that she used to lit her room. For a while, Yin chose to stay on the floor with her legs pulled up to her body in an effort to warm herself. It didn't help that she currently wears nothing but her thin white smock. A knock came from the door, and Yin jumped. She stood and went to the furthest corner of the room while yelling with a shaking voice, "Who's there?" "It's me, Your Majesty," came a voice from a female servant. She has changed her servant again, and unfortunately this time, the servant does not change faces. "You have a visitor." Alarmed, she stood and stepped away from the door. "Please go away. I don't want to see anyone." "No, Your Majesty, you might want to." "Please. I said I don't want to face anyone right now." She was met with silence from the other side, and she was revealed that the servant and whoever that visitor was has given up. Turning around, Yin aimed herself to go to her bed, only to be stopped by the sound of her door unlocking. "Don't!" Suddenly, the door opened, and all Yin's panic has eased upon seeing her visitor. Even with the bare minimum of the light in her room, his blonde hair stood out, so did his ruby eyes. Yin couldn't even circumstance the emotions behind them, because her visitor was quickly blurred with a sudden downpour of tears upon seeing him, but she was able to focus the relief that crept to her chest. "You're a fucking mess," were his first words, not with a tone of his mockery, but with a tone of concern. Without hesitation, Yin ran and jumped into his arms. She could have been careful, for it might be another imposter, but the moment she saw how he looked at her and heard his voice with a touch of ruthlessness that never meant to hurt her now, she just knew it was him. It was her husband. and the moment her body collided with each other, he revealed her just how eagerness, and now she feels much safer. Bakugo never wanted to punch someone or something so badly. It only dawned on him how much his rage could take him as he stared at the state of his wife. After the reunition, he immediately set her down on the bed and scolded her for not keeping herself warm, all the while taking off his white jacket to warm her. Bakugo then waited for her to neat train everything what happened. He didn't force her. He waited patiently because he did not want to trigger anything unpleasant in his wife's mind. But then, Yin finally started talking. It was him who had something triggered inside. Suddenly, her face changed, and she attacked me, Yin recalled quietly. But I managed to escape, thankfully. Bakugo connected himself and asked, "And where is she now?" Her face fell as soon as he said something. It was enough for Bakugo to draw a conclusion, and that conclusion frustrated him further. She fucking escaped. He looked down, taking a breath to calm himself. Veins started to protrude from the back of his hand as he clenched it into a fist. Shit, I should have never left you alone here. That is true. What she said startled him. But all this happened because of me too. He finally looked directly into her eyes. A glance was set on his features, not aimed towards her, but towards the horrible situation. The storm in his eyes, however, cased too soon as he saw the scratches on her knees. You're hurt. Yin immediately lowered her shock. It's just a few scrapes. Bakugo clicked his tongue, then stood to pace around the room, one hand on his hip and the other ran on his face. He stopped to ask her while training his gaze to her stomach. And they're fine. We're fine. Yin immediately placed a hand on her belly. We have to make sure you're actually fine. We need to check the baby as well. Bakugo paced towards the door. Where the fuck is that shit? The door opened and Kirishima came running in. Like the blonde, he looked to be in disagreeable state of worry. Yin, oh thank God you're safe. The redhead sighed in relief while Yin leaning on the chest drawer behind him. Kirishima panted. We came as soon as we received your letter. We apologize that we could not send a reply. Bakugo immediately rushed after reading it. I came out alive, Kirishima, she reassured him. And really, thank God you didn't, because if you didn't, I don't know what I'll do with him. He's gonna be... As soon as Kirishima started to blabber about Bakugo, the blonde immediately cut him off. Kirishima, the physician, get him now. Right, the physician. The baby, because of the baby. Yeah. Kirishima stuttered and seemed so lost. One more glare from Bakugo, and the redhead set afoot. I'm really glad you are fine, though. He smiled down upon her. Then he dashed outside to fetch the physician. Yin started to play the ends of her shock as she looked down, her brows furrowed and her lower lip trapped beneath her teeth. Bakugo noticed how she suddenly withdrew from her own thoughts, something she has learned to be quite dangerous to a person in an incredible vulnerable state. What are you thinking about? He asked her, and he almost caught himself off guard, breathing out a sigh when he successfully on shifting her attention to him. He seemed needed her attention on anything but that horrible incident. She looked up and was startled to see tears brimming at the end of her eyes. Bakugo immediately went back to sit in front of her again. Shit, don't cry. Why are you crying? He panicked and tried to wipe the tears that were so close from falling. Yin halted his actions with a sob that seemed to have snapped something in his chest. I know you can't stay here for long, but I don't want you to leave. She held at his hands like it was for her lifeline. I'm scared, Katsuki. I'm really scared. Bakugo couldn't speak for a while. He's afraid that if he is to utter a single word or make the slightest of movements, he would break this fragile being in front of him. He broke her many times before, and again, Bakugo started to swear now that if he breaks her again, he will be the one to send himself to hell. He racked his brain for anything at all that might increase in the fear of his wife. Listen to me, Yin. His gentle voice brought her head back up so he can look her in the eyes. It took him everything not to break right there and then at the lack of utter bitterment within those eyed-colored eyes of hers. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to leave you alone here again. Do you hear me? But those extras back at the palace can go to hell for all I care. You've put up with them enough. I'm gonna stay here. Bakugo couldn't understand what he said wrong because Yin started to sob even more. Shit, stop crying. Why are you still? No, she breathed out. I'm just very glad. Fucking hell. And your first reaction is to cry? The ends of her lips tugged into a small smile, and this time, Bakugo didn't fight himself from releasing a revealed sigh upon seeing her in the most relaxed self. She nodded at him, and the tears left her eyes sparkled along her smile. Thank you, Katsuki. It took him a while to respond to her gratitude because Bakugo found his breath stopping at the sight of her. It's breathtaking to see her solemn face transform into the usual sparkling disclosure that greets him every day. Yin looked her best when she's smiling. That much he admits and realizes. But what he didn't realize at that moment is the warmth and stubborn tugging at his heart to which she brought him. You're going to be all right. I swear that, he said in a low voice, and oh, the way her smile widened. It really brought him a feeling he couldn't quite understand. Her hand came to hold his. We are going to be all right. When the night fell that day, Yin found herself relaxing for the first time in her bed. She reckoned she would be able to sleep soundly tonight. The warmth of her room made her cheeks flush in just the right way, and the comforters both smell and feel good. But no matter how much she wailed it, her body couldn't put her to sleep. She got up, wrapped her robes around herself, and mustered up the courage to take a stroll outside. I want to go somewhere, she informed the guard stationed outside as soon as she opened the door. They followed her through the halls and stopped when she reached her destination. Yin stopped in front of a door and knocked. What? The response made her roll her eyes playfully, and when she opened the door, she was met with his glare. Katsuki? She greeted and watched his glare vanish. What happened? He suddenly became alarmed. Yin closed the door and shook her head. Nothing. I couldn't sleep. She observed how much his shoulders relaxed upon reframing and noted that he tucked in his bed with a few parchments spread on his lap. Clearly he's not ready to sleep, and Yin wondered if coming here it's a wise decision. Then stay here. His response made her blink in astonishment. With a small smile now presented on her face, Yin happily skipped towards the bed. He shifted and gathered his parchments to make room for her as she made herself comfortable under the covers beside him. Talk, Bakugo suddenly uttered. Yin was once again left surprised. About what? About anything. Just talk. Yin knew that her husband was not usually intimate in a conversation, especially if he does not deem having a conversation to be so important, which is why she's both amused and confused. However, she's thankful that he's making an effort on getting her mind off things. Well, after the physician said that our baby is fine, I do feel a lot better now, she said while caressing her baby bump. He hummed. How far are you along now? 2 months. Fucking hell. She laughed at his reaction. Bakugo dropped all of his parchments and turned to her. He doesn't seem to look aggressive by that information. In fact, he looks worried despite trying his best on staying composed. Really? And you don't feel anything at all? Well, besides from vomiting every morning and the pain in my chest, no, nothing at all. She answered with a playful sarcasm, and he glared at her slightly before it vanished, and the touch of worry appeared in his eyes once more. Why do you ask? Well, fuck. Aren't you supposed to feel even worse in the further stages of pregnancy? He asked. Ian nodded, but she assured him. I'll get through it, though. I think. A wave of silence followed as the two of them weighed down on the changes and responsibilities the baby will bring to them in the next 7 months. It only dawned on Yin how much they're talking too much of everything at this moment. Several events have passed: her issue in the court, her father, and the baby. The former events are both full of uneasiness and anticipation, and she tries to convince herself that the latter will hopefully bring them a new light. Are you scared, Katsuki? Her question stopped the rustling of parchments and the sound of his breathing. There was no answer coming from him, but she could see the answer from the way his jaw flexed and his hands making creased on the parchment. At least it's comforting to know that she's not alone in her fear. I am, she told him. You shouldn't be, he said in a low voice, as if to lure her into a sunken scene of tranquility. You will have someone with you all through that. Are you talking about my family? I'm sure as hell not. I sent a letter to your sister the day you were brought here so she could accompany you, but it was obvious from the situation that she never came for you. Yin was dumbfounded. One moment she was staring at him, and the next she was looking past him and she was progressing with her thoughts. It was all made sense to her now, as to know her father knew of her location. Her sister told him. Why would you do that, Katsuki? I don't fucking know. Maybe I felt guilty about leaving you here all alone and I was trying to make it up to you, but it turns out sending the letter brought you into even more danger. Bakugo decided he's done working and tossed the parchments aside. Yin watched him as he breathed heavily. In order to calm himself down, she sat up and held onto his hands. You are now making it up to me. You told me you're staying with me now, remember? He was not looking towards her before, but he is now. Just as he glimpsed at her, she slightly brought him down onto the bed with her. Now they lay holding each other. Yeah, he whispered. I'm staying. That was enough amusement for Yin to complete this moment. Her smile and closed her eyes. Her hands waving around his form tightly. Good night, Katsuki. Bakugo became a man of his words. When he said he'd be staying, he meant that he's staying for long, and not just for long. He'll stay as long as she needs him. So far, nothing has happened in the first month of his stay at Matsuru Castle. Nothing dramatic, at least. But there is still one concern, though. He may be a man, but just as Bakugo was surrounded by men in his court, he was surrounded by the court ladies and their everyday whispers as well. In the everyday whispers, he has heard talks about pregnancy, hence he has long known that a woman's case will supposedly become worse as they go further about in their pregnancy. Now he's witnessing it in his own wife. I don't know. I don't understand how I can have got so wrong. It was bitter. Yin has been muttering spitefully to herself while devouring her breakfast in a manner that he's never seen her do before, but Bakugo can't care less about that. He has far more concerns about her choking on her food. You're going to choke, for fuck's sake. What's wrong? Yin stopped to glare at him, but then she huffed and dropped her spoon. Another sigh before she finally started speaking. I feel bad just talking about it because just spill it out. Katsuki, I would sound like a ungrateful brat. Brat, he thought. He had never heard her say such a word before, and he's slightly amused by it. Oi, just tell me. No one will judge you. He gestured to the dining room, with no one around but the two of them. Fine, she huffed again. I woke up this morning howling out last night's dinner, and I decided to make some tea, thinking it would calm me down somehow. But you know how I don't want anyone making me tea anymore, so I spent time trying to perfect the flavor, and I even brought the most expensive tea we could find. But I just can't get it. And I wanted to throw the tea because it made me vomit again, but I feel bad and so ungrateful I'm wasting something. I do not know if it's me or just because of my pregnancy. Yeah, I know, he finished her. Don't cut me off, Katsuki, she sneered. Bakugo was taken aback. Yin realized what she had just did and shrunk in her chair. Sorry, I'm just... And then she distracted by food on his plate. Are you going to eat that? What the fuck, Yin? He asked, confused by her sudden reaction. I know, Katsuki, it's frustrating. Just please give me your food, she deadpanned. Bakugo looked down at his food. This has hot pepper in it. I know, and it smells good. Do you even like hot pepper? No. Yin got tired of his questions and snatched his plate away from him. He stared as she started to take a spoonful of his food and was even more confused when she started to hum in pleasure. This is all confusing to him, and whatever slight bitterness he had for her is stealing his food is now gone, and Bakugo is finding himself becoming more amused by her intentional tactics. If anything, it started to look adorable in his eyes. Wait, what the hell? Bakugo was able to catch his thoughts before he fell deeper into it. Shaking his head, he gave her a pointed look. You've become so weirdly and slightly impulsive all of a sudden. What can I say? It's your child I'm carrying. She smiled at him so cheekily and sarcastically. Bakugo was surprised that his temper hadn't reached its peak yet, and now he's finding this completely and undyingly more amusing. Well, fuck. Bakugo could only chuckle breathly. Suddenly, a knock came from the door. Kirishima then came in, and with a smile. It's time. Bakugo gave a nod and then turned to his wife, confused, who was already finished his food. Let's go. Oh, I think I know. When he stood up, Yin wiped her mouth and followed after him down the hall. Where are we going, Katsuki? You'll see. They reached the foyer just in time to see a carriage stopping outside. The coachman opened the door and Yin was letting out enthusiastic noises upon seeing their visitor. Uraka! Bakugo watched as his wife wandered over to the brunette. Before Uraka could even give a proper curtsy, Yin has engulfed her into a tight embrace. Meanwhile, Kirishima appeared to stand beside him. The redhead had a smile, pondered in nature, as if he commends the blonde for doing such a kind and doting gesture. Bakugo immediately gave him a slight glare, afraid that his friend would tease him about it. How come you're here? What? Yin is still gasping in disbelief and producing in squeamish on Uraka's cheeks to see if she's real. You're really here? Yes, I'm here, Your Majesty. His Majesty has sent for me. Uraka giggled at Yin's chat. His wife stopped and turned to him with a smile that gave Uraka time to approach Bakugo and Kirishima. The brunette curtsied to both of them. Your Majesty, sir. And then she was pulling a sealed letter and handing it to Kirishima. While the two conversated, Yin approached her husband. Thank you, Katsuki. Oh, this is just so wonderful. I appreciate it. I really do. She smiled, and the sun was beaming upon her, cascading a light that shines her beauty. A view of her reminded Bakugo of a warm spring afternoon, and he likes how it brought a cooling, innocent heat upon his chest. Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. He coughed rather awkwardly, bashful and clueless on how to return his wife's gesture. He looked over to Kirishima and Uraka to see that they've done with their conversation. Go, show her around. Yin was beaming again, and then off she went, babbling over to Uraka about her pregnancy. You look gorgeous, Your Majesty. Uraka complimented as much Yin allowed her to touch her belly. "Oh, thank you, Uraka. I'm really glad you're here. There is so much I want to talk to you about." Yin began to drag her upstairs. "But first, would you mind showing me how you make your tea?" Their voices started to fade as they disappeared upstairs. Bakugo turned to Kirishima, who was handing him the letter. "She looks so happy. You did great." The redhead grinned. "She deserved it," Bakugo uttered under his breath before walking up the stairs. "Come on, Kirishima. I don't want her out of my sight." He heard his friend release a big laugh before following right after him. Every step on the ground felt light for Yin as she's floating instead of walking. She's never felt this calm and happy since the incident, and she made sure to relish in every moment. She halted and faced the door beside her. One hand came to caress her stomach and the other knocked on the door. Lately, Yin found herself becoming more impatient and excited in her 3-month of pregnancy, and she did not even wait for the person behind the door to answer her knock as she opened the door and immediately smiled towards the blonde who noticed her presence. "Hello, Katsuki." A wide, sheepish grin embellished her face. Her husband raised a brow. "Oh, it's you." Yin muttered a "yep" while stepping inside and closed the door and marched towards him. Bakugo stood before his desk, reading the contents of the parchment in his hand. She slid between him and the desk and made her husband turn his attention towards her, and she took the opportunity to snatch the parchment from him. "Oi, what are you doing?" She ignored his question and placed the parchment down on the desk. She then sat her hands within his. "I have something to tell you." She smiled. "You look happy," he noted. "I am. I've been smiling all day and my face is starting to hurt." "Well, stop smiling." Bakugo teased and he got a giggle from her. "I can't." Yin swarmed her arms. "And this is all because of you." "Yeah, first you blame me for your mood swings and now this." Yin laughed at this, leaning her head on his chest as she did so. "But it's true." "Goddamn woman." She felt his chest vibrate as he let out a amused chuckle. Yin pulled back to look at him. "In all seriousness, what I really wanted to say is thank you. Thank you for this, Katsuki." "You don't have to thank me for everything." "But I do. I have to. Having Uraka made me here is making me happy. Even when she made me tea right, I didn't vomit this time." Bakugo sighed. "You know she can't stay here for long. Tomorrow she'll be gone." "I know. She told me." Yin's smile had softened from slightly disappointing news, but gradually didn't ease. Bakugo looked like he felt bad about what he'd just told her. She immediately started to speak to direct him. "And she'd also told me about what you did back in town." "What kind of shit is she telling you now?" He raised a brow. "Calm down, Katsuki. It's not something bad." She's not letting go of his hands in place of his shoulders. "Uraka said you supported the poor and homeless by distributing food and clothes. The letter she gave you this morning was from Midoriya, and I can only guess it's about that charity of yours." He finally got a clear image of what she's talking, and judging by his face, the blonde then scoffed and Yin knew exactly smug about it, his own way of claiming a self-actressing demeanor. "Charity, that's what you call it now?" "Well, to me it looks like that, Katsuki." Yeah, there were some extras from ration, so I did it. The rats will get to them if I don't do something." Yin didn't know if it was a positive for her to smile to because softer than ever, if it was her old self were to stable before the Bakugo Katsuki that she now knows. Well, she would have fainted from the unexpected surprise, but as Yin grew to the woman she is as of this moment, she noticed her husband is starting to mirror her progress. Hence, she can only smile and bask in the spark within her heart from the overwhelming pride and joy she's currying holds with him. She tilted her head and said, "You did a good thing, Katsuki. I'm proud of you for that." Bakugo was left speechless, and he was willfully dodging her gaze by turning his head away from her and finding the wall as the most interesting thing in the place. His mouth opened and closed as if he wanted to say something, and finally his voice came out. You would have done the same. Yin made a bold move, whatever it's from a high or the joy or whatever their proximity was, but she suddenly leaned towards him and captured his lips in her own. She was pushed back as Bakugo fought with more forcefully in his kiss, while his hands came to wrap around her waist. As soon as they broke apart, she was smiling. And here I thought you just wanted to talk. Bakugo smirked, his lips brushing upon hers as he talked. Ian smiled. Her hand came to rest on his nape. She started to play with the ends of his blonde hair while leaning in. This is nice, too. She enjoyed the way he chuckled and how he pulled her closer towards him, but she could feel the touch of security and gentleness in his hold as he made sure not to hurt her stomach. Yin was pulled towards him as he took her lips in another passionate lip-locking, and just like she said, she made sure to relish in every moment of this. Bakugo was not one to often mind nor think of a day to be good nor just horrendous as another day. He never much observed, however. Today he woke up feeling an odd, pleasant activity in most everything. Again, it was very odd, because today Kirishima and Uraraka are to depart Matsuru Castle. The former he is concerned about. Bakugo would not often admit it, but he finds Kirishima to be the only company and completely tolerates, aside from his wife, of course, to whom he is staring at now, and finding that pleasant feeling again. She talks with Uraraka, her face pressed from smile and hopelessness sighs as she showed both grateful and for the brunette's short company and her limited visit. Bakugo is suddenly struck by a certain court as Yin seemed to look different every time he finds his ruby eyes pinned on her. Today, she looks much brighter, more glowing. Her skin glows healthily by its own color. Her eyes sparkle and her lashes brush ever so slightly on her skin, at the bottom of her eyes as she blinked. Her hair, sometimes Bakugo would find himself reaching out for it, if not for the distance within them now. It looked so smooth and it framed her face so perfectly. Well, I think that's all of it. Bakugo snapped out of his thoughts and turned his attention to Kirishima. The redhead stood before him, his eyes looking over the carriage that has been loaded with their chests. He looked back to Yin again, and she's not yet finished talking with Uraraka. He turned to Kirishima just as he started talking again. I'll be away for a month, I think. Mina has been asking for me a lot, and of course, there are things I need to take care of in town. I think you'll be fine without me for a while. Huh? Bakugo raised a brow. Of course I'll be fine without you for a while. What the hell are you still doing here anyways? You should be going right now. Right. I'm just waiting for Uraraka. Together, they turned to the two females still engaged with their last words before the departure. Bakugo caught himself staring at his wife, taking immensely yet, if not for Kirishima snapping him out of his thoughts for the second time. Oi, Bakugo? What? The blonde stood upright and glared at his friend. Instead of answering, Kirishima stared at him as if he had grown two heads. Then, the redhead's next action startled him. Kirishima smiled, so wide that Bakugo thought that corners of his mouth would reach his eyes in two more push. His glance then infatuated as he repeated his question. You look different, the redhead said. Huh? Different how? No. What I meant to say is, you look at her in such a way you never looked at her before. Well, fuck, you have a great way of wording your thoughts at your first words. Bakugo stopped as his friend commented just now started to sink deeper into his mind. Just like a jab, no, more like a wake-up call, only that Bakugo refused to acknowledge in despite of the turning ringing of the call in his notion. The blonde didn't say anything, and Kirishima took the chance to say his final words. Bakugo, I think you're in love. Fuck. There is more clouds in his mind now. Stormy and rainy clouds, throwing him into a haze. He didn't even act when Uraraka approached him. Not when she said goodbye together with Kirishima and they boarded the carriage. He stayed silent until the carriage departed at the sight. Are you all right, Katsuki? A warm touch in his arms cleared his vision. He looked to his side and saw that everything turned gray, except for the concerned face of his wife. Even with such silk-sicking look, she managed to look good? What the fuck? Bakugo panicked again. This time, he controlled himself. Yeah, he answered. Yeah, I'm good. Yin said a comforting smile, and her grip on his arm tightened. It was then he felt a tug on his chest, and that he became scared over the fact that Kirishima may be right.